Stacy, good to see you. Valerie, good to see you. We're gonna have good times today. We got 2 minutes. Anything that we need to say before we get moving, Katie?
I don't think so. I was thinking this morning, thank you everybody for this is like our is this
Yeah,
our
we've done a
sixth
few.
one or
Yeah,
our
we've
fifth
done a
one?
few. Right?
And so it's always fun for the first few times, everybody wants to try something new and everything. So I really appreciate you all showing up even like after the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. Um, it makes me I always get super three that I am. I always get super worried that I'm gonna log on and like no one's here. All of a sudden for no reason. I don't know why I would think that, but so thank you all for coming. I'm always really, really happy when I log on and see all your faces again. So it's fun to build something.
I heard a public speaker say something to the effect that she feels like when she's throwing an event that it's like inviting people to your birthday and not knowing if they're actually going to show up, but doing it. But because she did
Yeah.
this professionally, it's like every week,
Yeah.
like that. It's going to show up for my birthday. I hope they like me. Um, well, because we're ending the series today, so we gonna have to pick a new topic. This has been very helpful for me because a lot of the stuff that I'm doing on that second book ends up revolving around some of the topics that we're talking about. So your input has been hugely beneficial. I imagine some. I know that on Katie and I's radar, we consistently are kind of kicking the can down the road with talk of affect groups and their overlap with some of the other triads. And what else have we been talking about that we keep kind of pushing off? Can't think of anything. Um,
No, that's the big one. We had that wing discussion.
yeah.
We're doing Joey's stuff, but
Yeah, we could have a roundtable on processing center just
yeah.
to kind of wrap everything if we wanted to. Anyway, I'll kick out something on the Patreon, just inviting everyone to speak. So, Katie, welcome. Katie Hill, welcome. That is. Katie, if you put your number in your description, which is top right
Mhm.
of your picture, just hit on the three dots, and I would love to. What's your number, Katie Hill?
I'm a 3.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, Suzanne, welcome.
I can't find a place to put my number in. I've tried and tried.
It'll be. Let me see if I. What's your number?
9.
All things. I didn't realize this. I can do it for you.
Yes.
While you're there, Jeff,
um,
will you make me a
yes,
co-host too?
yes. Thank you. All right, we're getting close. All right, we're going to do this. Wrapping up with sixes and sevens. Friends, the big idea for this whole study, as you probably know, has been really looking at the shadow side and asking the question, like, what in Enneagram, like wisdom, can kind of rescue me, save me from that shadow? When we're aware of our shadow, when we're aware of our fears, the things we avoid, when we are aware of our passions and fixations, like what tools are out there that we can grab hold of? In my view, the primary tools are not the list of virtues, which commonly get elevated. I think that it's a mistake to try and manufacture the virtue that is associated with your number. So for me, as a one, just trying to be serene is never ever going to work. What needs to take place is some other stuff prior. And what we've been outlining is that the holy ideas and the heart's message really create a better foundation for moving forward. So for the one, heart's message is something to the effect of you are good or you're complete, you're whole. And the holy idea is holy order. And that is that there is an order to reality that is there outside of anything I can ever do or accomplish. So my goodness is the message my heart needs to hear. The holy idea tells me about reality. And from those things, then I can get into my virtue, which is serenity. I can feel the serenity of knowing who I am internally and knowing about the world outside me. We're going to see that play out when it comes to sixes and sevens in terms of that same kind of process of addressing some of the shadow for sixes and sevens, and then how it plays out in terms of what's the work, what are the sorts of things we can invite into our minds and hearts that get us into a better place, a healthier place, a more holistic space. If you're reading or listen, if you're listening along with stuff I'm doing in the reading room, going through Dr. Siegel's book, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about today is actually going to get teased and brought up in chapter 3. I'm going to release that episode this weekend, so there it might be a companion to what we talk about today. Gonna start with the sixes. And I'm going to give my preface, invite Katie to give a preface. But for me, whenever talking about sixes, sixness itself kind of washes over me, and my mental life starts jumping all over the place. And so I have empathy for the sixes. I'm jumping into your space and feeling all of the questions that emerge, and then I'm all over. So sometimes when talking about sixes, that just is how things go. So apologies for that. But you got any thoughts on sixes before we start moving here, Katie?
Um, just as always, I'm gonna send the holy idea in the chat, and after Jeff sends his notes about sixes, and I just would love to hear how it makes you feel, right? We talk about that. What parts of you does it hit? What parts of you want to believe it? What parts of you don't want to believe it? Because I know I have both parts in me when I read the holy idea about threes. What's getting in your way of believing it, right? All the things. From the point of view of a six, what's so hard about accepting this holy idea is what I'm always interested in. So I'll send it in the chat right now.
Yep. I jumped ahead of you.
No, go ahead.
Um, the I would love language from the sixes on the shadow. I think that this is contentious. I think that it's not seen. I think that like when I bring this up with Kristen, messagey, we banter all around, and TJ and Kristen and I have been actually offline, been kind of processing what's the language that's best for sixes. So I would love to hear input both from sixes and those who love sixes. But in my view, what the six is seeking is like there's a passion underlying the six of wanting to be faithful and really finding stability there. And there is a fear that emerges from how sixes are in the world, from bringing the world through their head. And that is the fear that they're not supported. You'll notice how relational the fear is. And as Katie and I actually, the episode that we're releasing Wednesday is going to be on sixes and how they pivot into the heart center in order to get what they need in order to meet their anxiety. Being unsupported is very relational. That fear of being unsupported or lacking support makes it so that the six has an avoidance of hope and trust. There's a feeling here, it seems to me, where sixes are anticipating all those dangers. They're looking outward for ways to prepare. And that means I'm going to try and be relational. But of course, human beings are flawed. Who can you actually trust? This creates a further anxiety. That place of landing, it seems to me, of not being able to trust oneself or trust others, and how trust works for the six ends up being a huge problem. And so much of the sin and so much of the fixation, so much of the work that sixes are having to do has to like relies there. It's I don't trust myself. I don't trust others. I know when Kristen does work, she generally focuses most on trusting yourself, on not outsourcing your power to others. And so that's, I suppose, where I'm starting. Do you got any thoughts, Katie, to start the shadow side here?
No, I think that was great.
Boom.
No more thoughts.
The passion emerges from that place of distrust, and that would be the cowardice that sixes may talk about. Cowardice can be both a withdrawing, it can be an anxious cowardice, it can also be seen in like a form of recklessness. Recklessness, like I'm going to run into the battlefield waving my sword, can also be an expression of being cowardly because you're not trusting your mind, you're not trusting your judgment, you're just unleashing the energy that you have into the battlefield, as it were. Um, but those are my thoughts on shadow. Uh, who's got some thoughts on this? What's worth saying about the shadow side of sixes?
Do we
I
only
guess
have
I have
one?
some.
Is it just you, Asher? I guess
Judging
so.
by the screen, yes.
Well, go
Um,
ahead.
Here we go. Gosh, I think what's helped me as a six wrap my head around like shadow side, um, things like that is the language around trust of self and trust, and how that impacts the trust of others. Like when I first was kind of getting into Enneagram stuff and was listening to some things about sixes, like I never had that like, oh God reaction. I had more like a, oh, that my life makes sense now, um, kind of reaction. And that was after I heard like, I think it was Jeff, one of y'all's podcasts, and y'all were using like self-doubt, trust language, as opposed to just the like there's a final destination situation around every corner, like there's this um kind of prevalent stereotype of sixes being like super, which yes, there's like a lot of worst case scenario that I have in my life and things like that, but it's not like, oh God, did I get the plug on the toaster wet and it's going to burn my house down or something, like that's just not part of how my brain works. Um, but the trust and the language around trust, self, and a strong, fierce need for certainty is like very, very helpful and descriptive, for me. And I think there is something key about that relational component. I think reflecting back on my story, one of the things that came up to me like a childhood message was when like repair conversations never happened in our household. And so I was never like, there was a lot of confusion around like what happens if I mess up or what happens if I made a mistake. And one of the things I heard a lot was, you should know better.
Mm,
And so there's this like that kind of like built um this kind of need for like, well, I kind of need to know before I do something, because it's gonna like, if I don't, it could introduce this like relational fracture, and this person's gonna hate me and it's gonna whatever. So a little different from like the five wanting to get a lot of information. Um for me, it's about like the certainty of what's going to happen, things like that. I shared in this context a few times, I do hospital chaplaincy work, and one of the statements patients make all the time that I just so resonate with is just like, I don't really care what the prognosis is, just I just need to know. And they're like, it could be terrible, it could be great. It's just that not knowing, and not really knowing how something is going to go, is very much like, that's where a lot of my worst case scenario thinking kind of comes into play and stuff like that. It is all very relational, you know. Um, and I think that's what feeds into a lot of the earning for sixes. I know that's what feeds into a lot of mine. Like, being faithful is not hard for me. Like, if I say I'm in your corner, I'm in your corner. And um, as my friend Sean Palmer said once to me, he said, "You're a fairness broker." Like, it is not a stretch for me to extend grace to people that I've led into the circle. It's not like when I'm in your corner, I'm in your corner. Um, Now there's some growth around that, right? And there's a shadow side to that because there is this like uncertainty around if how to advocate for myself. I know a lot of times we talk about sixes not wanting to be in the spotlight. It's not that I don't have a. It's not that I'm like, oh, I won't get up in front of people and things like that. Like I do trainings, I do all kinds of stuff in front of people. But what it is like, oh, I want to kind of mute my needs. It's not that I'm very aware of the needs, but it's like I don't want my needs or my desires or longings to get out beyond the groups, And so, as listening to y'all's relationships on the line episode, Jeff, and y'all are kind of talking about like the differences between threes and sixes, and that actually kind of helped me think about this in a way of like, you know, totally resonate with a lot of like about struggles with success and wanting to be in the spotlight. But I realized like for me, where that really shows up is um like uh in how I um like advocate for myself, you
Yeah.
know. Um and I think the uncertainty is around like, have I put enough relational equity in other people's lives that they're gonna have my back if things fall apart? And
Right.
I think that's where the fear of support is, and a lot of it comes from that lack of repair growing up as a kid, and that message I heard from my father as a kid of like, you should have known better. Like, the affirmation that's helpful for me is like, hey, we make mistakes, here's how I can support you through that, here's how we can kind of like navigate this whole situation. I was never given that as a kid. So for me, it's like, is if I mess up, or if I drop the ball, or if I'm unreliable, or if I'm one of these many things that I find valuable and want to provide value to others in the world through my earning, is that person going to support me? Am I going to find support in this? Um, and so that's where I think a lot of the uncertainty also comes with. It's not just circumstantial. It's just like, um, am I going to have support if something bad happens?
Yep. I got lots of thoughts. You got thoughts, Katie?
Um, well, there's a few agreed, Delian. That was the one that I was like, whoa, I wrote that down in my notes. Um, there's a few questions in the chat. I'm gonna ask a
Oh,
question
perfect.
from Kelsey first, unless you want to say what you want to say first, Jeff.
No, let's start there.
So Kelsey says, would you say, for Asher, would you say you fear uncertainty more than you fear a lack of support?
That's a good question.
That's a great question. I would say there's definitely a correlation between the two. Um, I engage with uncertainty much easier when I feel like I have some support. I also feel like I've been able to engage uncertainty better, um, as I've engaged in doing Enneagram work, and especially like polyvagal embodied Enneagram work. Um, I can't remember where I read this, but I just read somewhere online like, if you don't feel safe in your own body, you're not going to feel safe anywhere. Um, and so for me, and they kind of had some exercises listed there, and it was just very profound for me, like just doing that kind of work and then seeing the different my sixness, some of my different six things just kind of fall away,
Mm.
So like, I noticed, I'm not going around and asking 12 different people their opinions on this one thing. I'm just kind of like, well, we'll just do it, it'll be fine. um I mean, I think about my work as a hospital chaplain. You want to talk about like uncertainty, like
Right.
you have no idea what you're gonna get into within the first 2 to 3 minutes of a visit with a patient. you know um And so I think, you know, I think some of and I know this isn't like a really clear answer, but I do think there is a correlation between just fear of uncertainty in general, like, oh, I'm uncertain how this thing is going to go. I'm uncertain how this thing is going to happen. Um, that I think is girded up by support, but that also feels very tenuous, right? It feels like the more support and the more connection and self anchoring that I do, and kind of self anchoring attachment work that I do, the more I'm able to lean into uncertainty and lean into like faith and earning shifts, um, those types of things. Does that kind of answer the question, Kelsey? Okay.
The idea of leaning into your underlying feeling, I think, ends up being interesting here. That may be something that's really worth elevating, specifically for the threes and nines as well. Um, how do you wrestle with your underlying feeling? It's something that Katie and I are doing a lot of work on right now in terms of like the language recently has been that the 369s detach from their primary center in order to find tools elsewhere to address
Mm-hmm,
their primary center. And so much of your language is relational in nature. So much of
mm-hmm,
your will others have my back when things fall apart. The when
yeah,
things fall apart is what might go wrong. The solution is
mm-hmm,
relational. And
yeah,
that image of the six, like if you just broad picture the six detaching from that feeling of anxiety, where's my tools? It's in my
mm-hmm,
heart center. I'm going to connect with others. I'm going to earn connection by looking out for their welfare,
mm-hmm,
gaining their welfare reciprocally, real similar to
yeah,
twos in terms of like
mm-hmm,
I'm earning this thing. It's a giving to get that can take place. The two giving attention to get attention, the six giving security in order to gain security.
mm-hmm,
And moving back into the head center to reassess like did this work, did my investments pay off, do I feel a little bit more
mm-hmm,
stable? I suppose that's where
mm-hmm.
I see the movement of sixes on these fronts, but it sounds like you're affirming that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think like you could go to our chaplain team and ask them if how you could describe Asher, and they would say reliable and consistent
Yeah, right.
and gets shit done.
Lots of
Like,
external energy there too, right?
yeah, yeah,
Like you're
like,
meeting them.
yeah, um, and so that's where it's very different from the two. And it's not that I'm like sensing other people's needs and trying to meet that. Like I'm just showing up in a very specific way that
Yeah.
is like, here, let me be consistent and reliable and safe, because ultimately that's what I'm actually looking for too, in some ways, is that safety and security. So I think you said that really well, Jeff, like giving security, um, to receive security. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of that sixth thing. And it's hard because like that, like being reliable and consistent are not bad things, especially like in a workplace or
Correct.
relationship, right? Like those are things that are gifts. Um, and I think it's that attachment to the security piece and like freeing that up in a way. Um, and I think that's where like the stance work is really important, the repressed center. So I think two ways that I've done that is, one is, as I kind of talked about, like the kind of getting into embodying polyvagal stuff. The other is mindfulness. And like, um, so where I am most phobic is in like romantic relationships. And so there was this woman that I was smitten by at one point, and found out she was dating someone else, and they had gone on like this date that I thought would have been like the most amazing date to go on this person with or whatever. And I was just like, no, like first feeling was like worst case scenario, like I'm gonna just I'm gonna die alone, like I will be a perpetual bachelor and just die alone, and so like the mindfulness and things like doing that work was able to help me like, okay, slow down. What are you feeling? Okay, that's fear. What's
Right.
behind this fear? oh, there's actually envy behind that fear. Like
Mm.
you wanted that. And like you're afraid because that's something you wanted and you didn't get it. And you didn't get it because you didn't say something. What's how are you feeling now? Oh, that's shame. Oh, you're feeling shame because you long and desire for this courage to like speak up and advocate for yourself. So like doing like for sixes, like even though um like I would say sixes probably have a can listen to a little bit of the three message of like slow down, like from a mindfulness standpoint, like slow your brain down. So for me, that's like one of the things that have helped me is slow down, pause, and name what I'm thinking, and like do some thinking about what you're thinking, and like naming the feelings, naming the thoughts. Like that has helped me kind of do that work of elevating that repressed center, and it's helped me from okay, yeah, so now I have some conviction around doing this work to lean into courage because
Yeah.
of the desires and longings of my heart should be honored in that way.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's not easy, right? Like I don't get that well all the time, but um, yeah. So I think that's kind of some of my thoughts on
That works.
navigating all that.
I'll get to you, Andrew, and we'll get to Delian's other comments. The two real quick things I want to emphasize that came out of Asher's statements. These work for threes and nines as well. Is notice how much of the I'm giving safety in order to get safety works. Naming that for threes in terms of giving attention and celebration to others and creating spaces, atmospheres where that becomes normative, and the anticipation that others will reciprocate, that they will likewise celebrate and push towards success, and telling you of your own value. Real important. Sixes and threes, creating those spaces. One's safe, one's celebratory. Nines are similar. Nines are creating the space of calm, but part of that is so that they themselves can get calm and peace from others. Real important. The other thing I heard is as you started talking about shame, shame isn't related to the head triad. That's your heart triad, right? Or that's your heart
Mm-hmm.
center. It's real. I continue to think, and this doesn't work for fives and fours, but for everybody else, that it's really worth naming the underlying feeling of your stress move, because that also has a lot of power in our lives, and in
Mm-hmm.
exactly the way that Asher was saying, and lots more work to be done there. But for me, as a
Mm-hmm.
one, obviously I experience anger, but I can also identify with language of shame because I go to four when things
Mm-hmm.
break. Also heard a lot of chaining there. This one girl out of the many billions apparently that are in the world had a one date that was really successful, and therefore I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. That is a very that's an extreme conclusion, as it were. but but it showcases how chaining works in a way I think that
Mm-hmm.
it's humorous and well stated. All right, Andrew, what you thinking?
Asher, I just had a question of clarification. A lot of what you said about in several different instances, but you look for support in your uncertainty, um, and several other things about that sort of shift to three made me think a lot about what Joey says about the primary numbers processing, making a processing shift. Does that resonate for you? Like as a general overall concept, you don't trust your thinking, you shift to feeling and look for people-centeredness. Is that a thing that actually works for you?
I think, I haven't really thought about it in that way. I think what I would say is not so much, I don't know if I would use the word thinking per se. I would say my perception and my interpretation of what's going on. So like where I'm uncertain in my own own way, which I really love your question because it's helping me kind of really dial into some nuance with this. For me, it's, am I experiencing this right? Am I interpreting this experience correctly? You know, and I think that's where sixes are looking for a lot of feedback from others. And I think that's where, when you look at the Enneagram sixes coping style of like just kind of like that reactive emotional, like, are my feelings okay? You know, like, am I feeling this properly? Like, I think that's where that move is happening. And, or at least where I've kind of experienced that move in some ways, is like, um, gosh, this event happened. It's really rattled me in this way. I'm feeling this way about it. Am I interpreting this right? And so what happens in a relational standpoint is, like, I'll say something to someone who's in a more positive coping style, you know, number, like a two, like, um, love you twos. I'm gonna have to pick on you for a second. This is one of the friction points I have, especially with like average to unhealthy twos, is if I like go and kind of bring my like, oh my God, this is what's going on. And the response I get might just be like, yeah, you know, it could be okay. I think it'll be fine. It'll be okay. Then I'm like, well, why is that? Was I blowing this out of proportion? Was I like seeing this wrong? Am I, you know what I mean? So like, I'm in that moment, like, hey, here's this experiencing I'm having. I take it to someone who, um, you know, who like is giving me like a response that's I don't want to say dismissive, but maybe that's how I receive it at the moment. And then I'm like in this self-doubt thing. And so yeah, like, so I think it is like very, very people-centered. Like, how is this other person perceiving me? Am I, or not necessarily me, but like, how is this other person experiencing this thing? Like, am I experiencing this thing properly? You know, am I feeling right about this in the same way?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I feel like that kind of tracks for me. Um, and I have a lot of thoughts on like sharing the line with three, but did that kind of get at the answer for your question there, Andrew?
Yeah, I think so. Her favorite language is sixes don't trust their own thinking.
Yeah,
So they
yeah,
so they shift to three for people
hmm,
centeredness. That,
I want
yeah,
to
to,
me, as a one, trying to put everything in a, you know, a one overall statement that I can understand.
yeah,
That's my that's my approach. That's sort of, to me, makes sense. I just wondered if it kind of makes sense to you. Thanks for answering.
yeah, yeah.
moving into the heart's message and holy ideas. I'm really curious to get your response here. I tend to think that relying on other people isn't necessarily a negative. So much of Kristen's language tends to be focused on really girding herself up and saying you need to trust your judgment, you need to not outsource your power,
Hmm.
kind of language. The heart's message, and again, this is kind of maybe contentious or it's kind of all over the place. There are the sorts of messages that the six needs to hear that are closer to you are safe or you're supported, or there's more gird up, your own strength. You are enough. You can trust yourself.
Hmm.
Do either of those types of messages hit you more in terms of what the six needs to have wash over them?
I feel like the "you are enough" is probably the one that resonates the most,
Hmm.
and like that, and hey, I'm with you, you know,
Yeah.
like, you're safe here, you're welcome here.
So
Um,
building on that, because I want to pair this with the holy idea, because I find this interesting that as with so much of the holy ideas, it feels very relational to me, the list. And so does the heart's message. Heart's message feels very relational. Not that you need this just from other people, but that you need this from reality itself. And so
Hmm.
the six is invited to have holy faith, and that is faith in reality itself. You can trust in reality.
Hmm.
You can trust that, you know, it's very similar to the one who needs to know that the world is being ordered by their
Hmm.
source, by the divine. It's as though you should have a what the reality is it's self trustworthy. I assume
Hmm.
is what's going on there. Can you unpack how you hear that holy idea?
Yeah, I think for me, when I think of faith, that is an invitation to let go of earning,
Huh?
and
Shh.
that you know
Protestant
that
that you are.
yeah, yeah. In the work I do as like a chaplain and stuff, like the work is always there, and there's just so many things that are left undone, and um and so having to wrestle with that, like how do you walk into a room and offer care for someone that is going to be discharged, and maybe you only met them in their despair, and y'all weren't really able to climb out of that together yet. So like how do you hold all of that, and especially from like an earning standpoint of like well, I have to do something, like I think that's one of the biggest thing my chaplaincy program is pushed up against, is like, and it starts early on, is like doing is not the only gift you have to offer the world, and so I think that's where the faith comes in, is there is something bigger at work in the world that is enacting in these people's lives, and I just
Yeah.
get to be their little Samwise Gamgee and walk alongside. And um I think I get there by reaching over to 3 and 9 space, so when I can reach over to that 3 space and engage in some hope of, not like outcome oriented hope, but more like, think Teresa of Avila hope, like, all is well, all will be well, all manner of things shall be well. When I can reach over to that hope, and then I can reach up to the 9 space of like harmony, and like, you know what? Like, I am okay. Like, what this person is experiencing is theirs, and what I'm experiencing is mine. And amidst all of these things together, I can trust that something's at work here.
Yeah.
And I can trust that something is happening, and I maybe planted a seed, or I offered someone a just non-anxious presence, and it was what they just needed in that moment, you know.
Right.
Um yeah, so I think that's where, for me, a real personal example where that holy faith idea kind of unpacks for me. I think it's just realizing that the glass is not half full or half empty. It's both, and that's okay. And I can host both of those things, because the thing that is bigger than me, whether that's whatever you want to call it, you want to say love, goodness, the earth spins on regardless,
Yeah.
like whatever,
And you can
whatever.
trust in it.
Yeah, it's like I can
Right.
trust that the world spanned for a long time with people on it way before I was here, and it will
There you
hopefully
go.
continue to spin. Um,
Right.
and so I think that's what that faith really starts to look like, and that's harder in like certain personal things too, right? So I also want to kind of name that, right? Like,
Right.
um, you know,
Katie, you got any thoughts on that?
Well, I have a, well, I had a different question. Do you want me to have thoughts on that?
Either way.
It might connect. So I'm gonna ask my question. It might connect. So earlier, Asher, we were talking about trusting your thinking and the wording around that and all the things. And you said something about sixes ask, do I have the correct interpretation of this? Have I perceived this thing correctly? Right? Is that the wording you
mhm,
use?
mhm,
So to me, that implies that there is a correct way to perceive something or interpret something, right? There, you're implying that there is a correct way to see this, and I don't know if I have done it. Which I don't know if that's true. Like we all have our different perceptions of things. We
Right.
can all only see it from one side, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, here's my question. Is it that, and I think sixes know that too, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it that you do feel like there is a correct way to perceive something and I don't know if I've done it? Or or is it I am just one person. My interpretation of something can only inherently be one data point. And to have the full picture, I need more than one data point. So it doesn't really matter my interpretation, actually. It just matters that I need more than one. Does
Yeah.
that make sense? Is like which one of those
Yep.
is it?
Honestly, I would put those on a spectrum. Like I
Okay.
feel like one is an unhealthy six, and I think back to parts of my life where I was like growing and like I'm seeking feedback because I'm comparing how I'm interpreting something to everyone else. And so it's not so much that there is a like the right way is the group way. Like
Oh, okay.
how
Just
is
because
everybody
it's the group.
yeah, just
Yeah.
like I want to blend in. What did you get on this one? You know,
Yeah,
it's kind of
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that, you know, you're just like looking at your friend, your neighbor's paper. And so I think that's like that unhealthy, like I'm outsourcing the trusting of myself. Um, I'm outsourcing the trust of myself to other people. And then I think on the other end of that spectrum, I thought you articulated that really well, is this like when I'm in a healthy space, like I know that a part of the worst case thinking of sixes, and really for any type, I think we all do this. I think it just has different flavors based on our type. But like the just power of one story,
Hmm.
you know? And so for me, I see engaging with others and getting different perspectives on situations as a way to open up to other possibilities and like
Yeah.
open up to where like, oh, I actually don't know everything. I don't have to know everything. And I can actually like celebrate the differences. And I think what some signs of health in that are, am I still differentiated with how I view things? You know, can I say, yeah, I kind of view this way. Jeff views it that way, and the world spins on. Let's grab a beer at Weldworks. You know,
Right.
um, I think that's how that kind of pans out for me. Because I think an invitation there, especially for me, like relationally, is like, you know, you think about like triangulation, right? And I think that's one of the things that sixes are notorious about from like a shadow side perspective. Is it's like I have this issue with this one person. So I'm not just going to go talk to one other person. I'm going to go get like six other people's opinions on it.
Right.
And then I'm going to go and engage with this one person. Where a much more efficient way to do it was like, well, why don't you just check in with the person you're having a problem with? Or the, you know, like check in on your story with this person that you're kind of engaged with, or that, you know, this relational dynamic that's bringing conflict or whatever, and let go of the outcome of it, you know, let go of whatever that thing I was trying to get from it or whatever. But I think that's where um, I would kind of see that
Hmm.
kind of the answer to your question.
It seems to me you're laying a foundation, a great foundation for the last move. That the virtue for sixes is something like courage. Courage is going to
Hmm.
emerge from the work that you've done on those points that you've been highlighting. I think in a very strong, solid way that like courage becomes a fruit that grows out of this posture towards faith, this posture towards belief in your own enoughness and all the
Mm-hmm.
remaining things that you've said. So that's good word. Last thoughts on sixes before we pivot to sevens.
Yeah. I'd also say like one thing with courage, because I think this also is the same thing with faith, is like the invitation isn't always to do something. And I think
Yeah.
for earning sixes, like that sometimes it's like, I think where I've been kind of wrestling at lately is like, with some things lately, is like, is the courage here for me to do something or not do something?
Mm,
Like what's actually the what's the vulnerability? Like if I want to talk about courage, then how is vulnerability shading the contours of the courage? And I think that's something that's helpful in that. And, I think invites a lot of consciousness and reflection, because that's also kind of the move into that nine space. But if you're falling into the low side of that, it'd be really easy for me to say, like, oh, well, I'm going to be courageous and not do anything when I actually need to do something,
yeah.
And so just being like very mindful of that. And so I think, you know, Jeff, you always kind of talk about like that repressed center. I think it's like bringing up mindfulness about like, well, what's vulnerable?
Yeah,
What's the
that's what I
vulnerable
heard.
thing to do here? You know, um, so
Yeah, I sent myself a note on that in terms of the heart's message and holy idea and what do they have to say to our stance work. It's a different kind of thing. It's not necessarily elevating the repressed center. It feels like it's moderating how your stance is. So for ones, twos, and sixes, the heart's message and holy idea may end up asking you to pull back the earning a little bit. For the five, four, and nine, maybe inviting you to get into your body more to lessen the withdrawal. And I suppose for the 3, 7, 8 to lessen that independent posture, is what I was hearing there. It's good. Thank you, Asher. Anyone else? Last thoughts on sixes before we pivot? Moving to sevens. You got thoughts on sevens, Katie?
Um, well, I do need to find the holy idea for sevens and send that. Um, I have a feeling that we're all going to be asking Valerie a bunch of questions.
I bet. So just having done some work with sevens and folks' questions about sevens, Valerie, I bet you there's going to be a lot of questions. So the more concise you can be, the better. So we can get to them. Um, let's see if I can do this. Oh, I can do it with my mouse.
Here's here's what I want from seven. So from Valerie, because she's the only one. I hear from a lot of sevens. Valerie, I'll be interested to hear if this is true for you. I hear from a lot of sevens, this, especially female sevens, this wish for people to take me more seriously. Like people think I'm just this shallow person who's fun all the time and all the things. And I really wish people took me more seriously because there is a lot more to me. And I think if we look at the Enneagram, we can see that's true. You're in the thinking center, right? You have this deep connection to your head and all this stuff. So, if at any point it becomes relevant to talk about that, to talk about maybe why sevens come across in this certain way versus like what it feels like to be a seven inside, if that makes sense, I would love to hear about that if you relate to that, what my other sevens have told me. That would be my first question, I guess. But I don't, should we jump right into the questions? Do you have a seven, Jeff?
Let me set up the shadow and we can start there. But it's not easy to see sometimes with the sevens, but there is fear there, and the fear is closer. It targets being deprived or being trapped in a painful situation, being what being bored. The This is a spur towards movement. There's like satisfaction to be uh, gained that is sought for the sake of appeasing that fear that I'm going to be stuck. So fear of being stuck, fear of being deprived. We're going to see this when we get to the heart's message, which is that um, you have enough, or I wrote it down wrong here. What is the heart's message? It's something to the effect of you will be provided for. That's what it is. fear of being deprived is going to lead to an avoidance. And that avoidance has energy for the seven, and it moves into their head in terms of where the six is going to solve their anxiety problems relationally. The seven is going to solve their anxiety problems with a very hyper future focus and future problem solving. So just like threes and eights are going to future problem solve, the seven is as well. It'll be scheming about how do I avoid being stuck, being deprived. That scheming matters, worth naming here, that it's going to generate an energy of constant forward focus and looking for a variety of places one could go if things went badly. That, in my view, is what gluttony kind of looks like, or it's the edges there, because gluttony is both a mental condition and a physical condition. There can be an overconsumption for sevens that takes place because if I just consume, then clearly I'm not deprived. But gluttony can also be about hoarding varieties of options. And I suppose that's where I'd want to start. You got any thoughts on to build on that, Valerie?
You said it all.
Boom. Rock music.
Brief.
Yeah. Now, to address Katie's question, which for me is very interesting. Yes, I have always felt less than, but not because I was a seven, because I was a one.
Mm.
Now I'm older. I was born in the 50s,
Yeah.
had the hot rod Camaro that I owned, but it couldn't be in my name because I was an unattached woman.
Right.
So I have a big bias, kind of can't help it. I've walked around the planet for 72 years with it. So yes, that has happened. And to be honest, I kind of fan the flames with being goofy or, just being irreverent.
So
Um,
why? Talk about that. What do you gain from doing that?
well, how do I say this without offending anyone? Because we got into it on the reading group when we beat a dead horse or there's much ado about nothing, on and on. I will break that usually with comedy, like, can we stop? It's not logical, it's not efficient, it's, etc. And that I'm more aware of doing it and I gotta cool it. Um, you know, Unfortunately, the first year or so, when I finally was typed as a seven, awareness meant don't do that, don't do that. It was all don't do. Um, so I reined in, if you will, a lot of those behaviors.
Mm.
But absolutely, my favorite line, I don't care if I'm talking to the attending physician about a patient, to a mechanic about my vehicle, they will say something inevitably stupid. And I go, if I were 6'6" and my knuckles drug the ground, do you think you would have talked to me that way?
Right.
I don't think so. There is just socially, culturally a bias. Sorry.
Right.
And I will fight it with the last breath of my body. So being a seven doesn't help.
So why choose comedy as the tool to fight that? Because that's the part of seven I'm hearing, right? You have a lot of tools. If we see all these things wrong in the world, We have a lot of tools to fight it. Why choose comedy?
I love to laugh. I mean, that was kind of missing from my childhood,
Mm,
you know, and it's a way of recalibrating. Whoa, what are we doing here?
yeah.
Like a nice cold bucket of water. But I'll stop if I need to.
Yeah, right.
Um, as to everything you said, Jeff, and there was a lot in my recall. It was all, I identify with all. I think that, and with everybody's help, I could see I had spoke about my great fear of being a no code and
Yeah.
somebody jumping my old bones. Yeah. And Asher, maybe it was you that said it's about more about control or knowing, or I couldn't see that.
Mm.
You know, I can better see it now. But again, mine is very specific fear.
Can we push into that for a second?
Yeah.
Because the question came up immediately in terms of that fear of deprivation seems to get answered with the holy idea, or heart's message of you're going to be provided for. What is it that you want most to be provided when you hear that thought?
The quick thinker here is going to get back to you on that. Let,
That's fair.
that's worth mulling over.
Yeah.
My assumption is that five, sixes, and sevens have a similar anxiety about resources that may get spun relationally with the six, but with the five and the seven, I imagine there is like a something like an intuitive sense that I need to have my basic needs met. Um, and the five will take a big step back to kind of, hoard resources at some level. The seven doesn't have that as their primary tool. Resources are things out there, and so they require gathering. They require um, seeing where they are and and harvesting. Am
How
I
do you
wrong?
gather and hoard for agency?
For the seven and the need for agency? Well, I think part of it would be agency over yourself. That was actually something that we did talk about in the reading room was not being stuck.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so it would be cultivating options. Cultivating options ends up being the agency move. If I have 12 different things I could do, then I have control.
Well, I've done though. Again, mine's very specific, but they don't matter. I
Mm.
do them to, it's an illusion that I will avoid a situation that has many ongoing outcomes. But
Is it?
it's an illusion that I've taken care of the problem or I've done all I can for
Yep.
agency. It's like, yeah, keel over and find out.
That's the target, isn't it though? Like at some level, if you feel mentally stable, you're stable.
True. And again, it's so specific. If I'm awake and can advocate for myself, that's not the fear.
Yeah.
But what
Wait,
you
so what did
do,
did we
what
say the
you,
fear? You keep saying the specific fear. Did we say what the specific fear is?
oh,
Did I miss
D-
it?
well, it's
yeah, to
deprivation
be
and being
coded
stuck.
and brought back.
Oh.
Let
Okay,
me
yes, very
let me
specific. Yeah.
let me unpack something real quick. Yeah, because our previous conversation had to do with mental decline, And that
Oh,
for a 7, it may be the case that you get stuck in your own head. You that if there was you know, something like Alzheimer's kicked in, that's a place of stuckedness where you lack agency. How do I escape this?
mhm.
What are my options? That becomes a source of anxiety. And so and perhaps tell me if I'm wrong, Valerie, on that front, you can't outrun what's going to get you.
True that.
Yep.
But honestly, statistically in my family, it ain't gonna be Alzheimer's.
Okay.
Top 20 in the great race to take out Val, that's not there. You
Can
know,
you, Valerie, I'm really interested. Can you define agency for us? And then I'm really interested if any of our 8, 9s, and 1s would define agency differently. Because typically we talk about agency with 8, 9s, and 1s, right? But I agree with you, a lot of people can be really concerned about agency. So I'm
it,
wondering if there's a difference in how we feel about it.
well, it's an, I don't know if it's a narrower definition. It's with
Maybe.
regard to medical care.
Okay.
And you can, I've just bore witness to too many people's just being ignored or
Yeah.
being told that, well, we can't do that. Like I cannot get the no code paperwork. No doctor will write it for me because I don't have a chronic condition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, so it's very specific, more than likely a tough car accident or something that I don't think I can come back from, or I don't want to come back from.
Have
So,
you have you had this very specific fear your entire life? Like even when you were a little girl?
well, thankfully that wasn't one fear I had as a kid.
So that's why I'm wondering. So I'm wondering if agency has been a pattern over your life. Like if you didn't have this one example to talk about agency, how would you say has a search for agency still showed up over your whole life, not just in this one,
Okay, well, back to
you know?
the question about female 7 being
Mm-hmm.
taken seriously, not being heard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they're related.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
So one thing is that I haven't tried to work on or diminish the fear because to me it's reality.
Right.
I can say everything will
Mm.
be fine or it doesn't exist or, you know, but I think, and with age, sometimes there's a price you pay for bearing witness and for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I, yeah.
So
And
I'm wondering, do you have anything else to say, Valerie?
no,
I'm wondering our 8, 9s, and 1s in the room because I do think security and agency are so linked and we can talk about them very similarly, right? I'm wondering if the way that it seems like there may be a connection between being stuck and feeling helpless for sure. If the way that Valerie is talking about agency, is there any parts that you also feel connected to? Or if there's any, do you think being in the body triad changes your definition of agency a little bit or how you experience it, something like that? Does anybody
It's a
have
good
any thoughts
question.
on that?
Well, for me, I don't like to, my thing of agency is selling to people trying to get me to do something I don't want to do. I don't want to be controlled by other people. And yeah, I can, yeah, it's more like that. It's more like finding my own way or, retreating to my like go down to thinking and think more through something, but I have to make the decision. Somebody else can't do it for me.
It's
Yeah,
well said.
I think it's similar. Just the desire to have control over
Mm.
me and what what I want without being dismissed or betrayed. Like those two words tie into agency for me as an 8. Don't dismiss me and don't do something or say something about me that you haven't bothered to ask me about directly.
Mhm.
Like don't try to take control over aspects of my life, around by going around me. So I can see that, Valerie, for sure.
I recall a previous time when you guys were talking where you talked about agency being the capacity to act versus autonomy being the freedom to choose. And sometimes I get those two mixed up, but it sounds like, Valerie, you're talking more about someone taking away your freedom to actually engage in agency, having the capacity to act. So I'm not sure if I'm mixing my metaphors, but agency for me is the ability to actually do something.
That's
My
good. Yeah. Keep going.
my thought, Valerie, listening to your general fear of not being heard seems like a general case of the specific case that you're concerned about. Like that seems a general statement about the specific thing.
Mhm.
Uh, I think for me as a 1, with regard to agency, um, I'm less worried that someone will take my agency away because I won't let them. Like I'm gonna do what it takes to make sure the steps get done. Like uh, if and I was in medicine too, so I know exactly what you mean by watching the things that you don't want to partake in yourself. If I had that very specific fear that you do, I would not be as I would not be concerned that I might not be heard. What I would do is I would take all the necessary steps to make sure that I was heard. If,
Mm.
yeah, so I think agency is the same. We're after the same thing, but I think I would go about it differently.
I think
Perhaps,
that
maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but that uh,
I think Andrew's been his thumb on something that I heard there is that listening to Valerie's language, the primary here is about certainty of how she's going to get a secondary target, which is agency. But the primary target is certainty. The primary target is how am I going to think through this in such a way that I understand how I'm going to get my secondary target. And that would make a lot of sense for the 7 who's on that line with the body triad. The primary need will be certainty. Your secondary need would be agency. It'd be something of that effect. And those blend together. But the flow moves in that way. I imagine if we talk to the 8s, I would be curious if it didn't work the opposite direction in terms of having control first over what one thinks. Or as Andrew was saying, it would be, Andrew made it very personal. Somebody's going to take this away from me. Well, Andrew's on a 1, he's on the heart, the line with the heart. So agency has that relational component to it. And Andrew's phrasing, it might just be worth it. It's a dinosaur bone to uncover here in terms of the how these primary needs, agency, bonding, and certainty, um, come up in our hearts of what we want. Moving back, I suppose. Anything else there, Katie?
Well, Valerie, do you think that's true, what Jeff just said? Did you relate to that, or would you change any of it?
No, I do. And everybody who responded from, eights, nines, ones, I identify with.
Mm-hmm.
Again, mine's very specific.
Right.
all steps have been taken within the law,
Right.
you know, and hospital protocols to prevent it. But yeah,
Yeah.
so honestly, I don't have problems with agent. I'm an independent and I don't have problems with agency. I've been fighting barriers and every yeah. I identify, I don't like, I mean, nobody tries to control me.
Right.
I laugh. Um,
Doesn't sound
so
like you'd let them even if they tried.
I pass the popcorn,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Yeah. Again, mine's a little very specific and in true avoidance nature. Just avoid the hospital.
Yeah.
And there'll be no problems. And you know, the irony, the absolute joke is when you're conscious and can speak for yourself and you're saying, don't, I'm no intubation, you know. Well, if you can say that, you're exchanging air. You probably don't need it anyway. But
Right.
we just wait till you pass out, then we tube you anyway. So once you're unconscious, you know, that's the point of it's just a quirky thing. And maybe I've done all I can do and I need to quit focusing on it. My children are aware, you know, their job is to get me out of there, you know.
The image there that I hear is apt, the anxiety of being stuck, but it's you have moved beyond that spot where that stuckedness is going to be something physical. You're rightly anticipating having had experiences in your healthcare work of this is what real stuckedness looks like in a physical sense.
Yeah.
And so the avoidance is the anxiety that you have paired with your experience. The heart's message and holy idea, I suppose we can elevate into that space of what would provision look like? You will be provided for. Well, what would that mean given my anxieties? Holy wisdom, there's a divine plan, there's an order, there's something of a process from your source. So those paired together seem to be a powerful message and really when I hear it, that sounds like a very difficult message to stomach. Notice the body image, but the difficult message to stomach in seven space. But what do you hear there?
It's tricky because unless the laws change,
Sure.
you know, I mean,
Yep.
you can just collective sigh of relief. There's just barriers that I don't have any control over, even though it's my body.
Right.
So, I think I bypassed your question. You know
Well,
how
actually,
hard it is for me to get into the heart, right?
Thank you for trying, Valerie.
You just like hop right over, and I'm like going, ooh,
What? Yeah.
wait, I'll get there.
I felt like you actually answered it because you're doubling down on the anxiety and how hard it would be to say the divine is going to provide for me, even though I can't provide any assurances for myself. You've tried all the things you can legally to appease your anxiety, and they aren't available. So what do you do? And you're saying that is a place that's really difficult to live.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. And then a little part comes in that you don't control it, you know, like take a
Mhm.
break.
Right.
I am a person of faith. I do have belief that after all my nuttiness, it will be okay. It's just and I think age doesn't help. Aging, you know, I've crossed a tipping point of what's reasonable to come back from and what's not. And I do, you know what? I have 3 children, and there's this thing about being a burden, or I don't want, they shouldn't have to make my decisions. They know what I want. But that's after the fact, after the damage is done. Unhook her.
Yeah.
So again, I need to work on that a lot. Work on letting it go somewhat, I think.
I think this is that puts the thumb on where I wanted to go with this. Just watching both my 7 fathers deal with mortality, this is something that they really struggle with in terms of like this is an inescapable trap. There is no avoidance of this. This will get you. And so what does it look like to engage reality in a healthy way, knowing one's mortality, knowing that it may be a very slow process? That's actually what gets them. This might be slow, and how do I avoid getting stuck in the slow um uh struggles of my body? And I mean, I imagine all of us would struggle with that in different ways, but that would be a chief anxiety for a 7 because again, the
I would
stuckness.
differentiate
Do it.
between dying,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
you know,
And how
and
you get there.
and no, a clinical barbaric situation in a building somewhere.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
So
how you
to
get
me,
there.
they're very different.
Yeah. I think
Um,
you're saying that one.
I'm not afraid of dying. I never have been, and that's kind of scary from the outside for a 7. Sure, let's do this.
Yeah.
Right.
What are the odds? You know, what could go wrong?
It would be getting stuck in a degenerative disease, for example. That's where, and that would terrify all of us, obviously, but that's what
Yeah.
I hear in your language.
Um, no, it's really specific to having an MI or losing consciousness or a car crash, you know, like very specific.
Yeah.
So Valerie, you're saying
Degenerative.
I'm
I'm
sorry, your
sorry.
specific concern is a chronic vegetative state kind of scenario?
No, a code. Code
Just
blue cracks my sternum, ventilator. Why?
Yeah.
To what end?
Right.
So again, it's real threads. It's, you know, thread the eye of the needle here.
And that's the agency element that we were discussing. That's good.
Yeah.
The move, it seems to me to land the plane for 7s that you're going to be provided for and that there is some sort of order, plan, wisdom that oversees all things, invites the sobriety that 7s need most on these fronts. It counteracts the gluttony of how do I move fast enough to outrun? How do I foresee every possible contingency so that I'm not in that kind of place? Entrusting one's self to the provision of something else is I imagine, a very difficult step, but it invites that sobriety. Yeah.
I prefer temperance.
Okay. Perfect. Temperance works.
No, sobriety has just so many
Sure.
cultural implications, and I think temperance. Gosh, Jeff, you're giving me so many things to mull. I'm quick-witted, but when it matters, no, matters of the heart and the head, I
Yeah.
mull. So I'll get back to you. It is, do I believe the heart's message. Yeah, I'm not fully there in
Right.
my body, and yeah,
No, that's the work though. Yeah.
yeah, the work, and this is like out of nowhere. Somebody, one of our other sessions, I learned so much from y'all, but I think so I'm a 7, and I have these, and I have the check sheet of slowing down, sitting in it. What am I feeling? And I go, well, yeah. But my stance seems to have a lot more. When I look at when I'm going bad, it isn't, I mean, 7 stuff is involved, obviously, but I don't have any self-preservation
Right. Right. Right.
in me. And that's what will command the lead when I'm not healthy.
Mm.
Um,
I'm curious how much the heart's message of being resourced or the work towards the holy, if we've talked about the path being bringing up the repressed center, is there an element of slowing down and feeling that connection in the heart space that the resource is social or is connection as opposed to physical resource?
Say it again.
So, if the path towards the holy idea or is bringing up the repressed center, then is and we're talking about the heart's message of being resourced. Is that really a talk about a description of connection resources, where the path is slowing down and being able to move into that heart space and connect with other people in a way that and I don't know exactly what I'm asking here, but I feel like there's something there,
Yeah.
or where the language I hear you using in that slowing down is really about, seems like there's something there about connecting with other people, which lives in that heart space. Is that an actual question? I don't know.
Well, no, but in I do connect. The thing is, I've got so damn many repressed areas. So we went from self-pressed, again, I don't have a line to the heart triad.
Mm-hmm.
That's a toughie for me. And I do have to sit back and mull and climb toward the heart triad. That doesn't seem to be, so connection is resource, but that one doesn't seem as difficult for me. I can get there. I can't articulate it, but I can get there. And that was totally off topic that I jumped over to stances, but I think you said it, Eric, that you talk about stances when you're discussing, introducing the Enneagram and stuff. And I did the hunter farmer, what is it? Hunter farmer
Hunter gatherer.
gather. I had identical numerology for hunter gatherer and just like El Zippo on self-press. And I went, oh, could this be a problem? And I'm starting to see more than just being a 7 with its typical avoidance, short attention span, blah, 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 blah. The repressed self-press, I'm starting to pay attention to it.
Mm.
So
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Ingrid
Yeah.
has a question.
No, my question is, I know like the holy ideas, it's the idea that we kind of get glimmers of it. To me, at least in my perspective, it's like it shows up once in a while and we think, oh, that's what it
That
feels
would be
like.
nice.
Oh, and then it's gone. So that's my question. Have there ever been times when you've experienced the holy idea for the seven where it's like, oh, that's what it feels like?
I, I I believe so. Now, five, so I have a line, my security is five. And when I go to five, I'm going home. And all is right. I just sit back and observe the world. I feel healthy. I feel that I will be taken care of. It's a good, and I can actually feel it when I'm going into five. I have to be in a healthy space to go there, a healthy, centered in seven. And then I go over to five, and it's so sweet. So once again, I think I bypassed your question, but yeah, I believe I have felt it before. I remember the first time reading the childhood message and then the holy ideas. I was just kind of like, wow, are you sure these are written for sevens, So they weren't aha moments like other things have been. They didn't hit me strongly, but obviously, yeah. So I believe I have been to the mountaintop and I have seen what that looks like. I think. Of course, I would say, I think.
That's a good place to land. So, uh, last thoughts on sevens? You got anything, Katie?
You need to send your notes on sevens in the chat.
I can do that.
Thank you, Valerie, for sharing all of that. That was
Yeah.
really helpful.
Big idea for me coming out today, and it's just to land the plane on the whole thing. Heart's message and holy ideas is where kind of all this kind of ends up centering. These are spiritual solutions, as it were. It's something beyond yourself. It's pushing into whatever your source is. The more that I'm getting into the Dr. Siegel book, the more he's pitching the problem that just given our biological, neurological fashionings, these our underlying feelings emerge, pop up, have a lot of power. The pivot towards having something like a life of the soul and having that appease those underlying feelings is kind of here. So it seems like if you go down that road of pushing into your source to meet your underlying feelings, I'm really curious what gets kicked out here and if the corresponding virtue of your type is something that you experience and enjoy. And, are you not actually hitting something real when you go down that road? I think that ends up being important. The other thing, and this was to Eric's point, was the heart's message. It feels to me like it takes a little bit of the edge off of your stance. Is actually the thing. It's like kind of pulling back. So often our stance is how we get what we want in the world, and it can get really aggressive. Heart's message invites us to pull back, open our hands up a bit. It's almost like what to do given the holy idea of the why. What world are we actually in? You can loosen up a little bit because the the divine is on your side and working in your favor on those fronts. It seems to me to go across all the types. Last thoughts on this, Katie?
Um, my last thoughts are just to repeat the beginning. Thank you, everybody, for coming and I think holy idea can make us feel really vulnerable. Um, and maybe this is the three talking, but like when I read mine, I'm like, this makes me feel stupid. Like I wish I believed this. You know what I mean? Like this is just easy for the rest of you to believe this, and it's like the impossible mission for me that feels stupid. So thank you everybody for coming and like sharing how it makes you feel and like the inner workings of how you're talking through all of that and all the things. Um, Jeff and I can talk into a microphone all day long. But the
It's true.
really fun part for us is getting to talk with you guys and hearing about your perceptions of all of this and how you feel about it. So this is what we really like doing. So thank you for coming.
Well said. As always, just gonna open up the last 25 minutes for Q&A and just what's on your mind, what you want to talk about. But if you want to go enjoy your Saturday, you are welcome, and I'm thrilled that you came alongside Katie. So thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Look for a poll from us in terms of next topics. But with that in mind, what's on your mind? What's worth talking about Enneagram wise?
I'm just gonna tack on at the end of the sevens stuff here.
Yeah.
Y'all had a conversation, I think it was in your wings conversations, about eights, and like it devolved into this. What does it look like when an 8 and a 7 get together? My best friend is a 7, and you like just described our college experience. It was amazing.
That's exactly what it is.
Yes,
It's the college experience. Trouble. They're getting into trouble.
Yep. That was my wife's response, was trouble.
Yeah. We should have named that. That's the space in between 8 and 7.
Between
It's just
eight
getting
and
into
seven,
trouble.
Oh, it's so funny.
There's a meme on my Instagram from like several months ago, and it's like two adventurers like sailing across an ocean to go fight a dragon or something. And it's like, this is what 8 and 7s do, like when they get together.
You mentioned that on the podcast, and I went looking for it. So you should like post it somewhere again, because I was like, that's that was
Let me see if I can send it in the chat.
Okay, great.
I'll try to find it. Funny.
What's on your minds? What's worth talking about, y'all? Meredith, you need to send me a direct message. We'll do a mistyping.
Okay. Yeah, I think I need some help.
So, do you send me? I'll forget. I got a busy day, but send me a direct message. I'll get in touch with you.
I will. I wanted to say, for what it's worth, and I'm definitely a novice here, but I have a 7 son, and you are just describing him to a T. And it's so funny because I was just buying a plane ticket for him to come visit me. And I said, you know, I'll buy the ticket if you want, and you can pay me back. But I'm so afraid to buy the ticket because he might get a better offer this summer to go do something else. So I keep saying, are you sure you're going to come this time? Are you sure? You're sure? And it's not that he does, you know, he's a great guy. He's a great son. But I have to be aware of the fact that there's definitely a possibility something better will come along. And he said, you know, can I bring my skateboard on the plane? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And so he's a fun guy. He's really a fun guy. So
it's a good description.
Yeah.
That isn't true for all
add,
7s. No, if I give my word, you know, no, I will. No.
I think that's a big difference between male and female 7s, actually. Not all males and not all women. But I do experience like so when I was in Joey's cohort, we had this moment where we were talking about 7s, and like the male 7s were saying such specific stuff and the female 7s were saying such specific stuff, and Joey just had this moment of like, I think you guys operate pretty differently. Like she's like, some numbers are the same across all the genders, more or less. Some numbers are pretty different across the genders. And she just said 7s was the one where she thinks might be pretty different. And I'm thinking of the female 7s I know versus the male 7s I know. And I would say at least a slight pattern, you know, not 100%, but I'm wondering.
I would bet highly that difference is based on the fact that female 7s probably have felt more naturally stuck in our culture, and therefore there's more of a defense mechanism that may come up around that.
More social pressure is what I think. Males have probably an easier time with the getting out of things. What do you call that? Being charismatic, spinning it.
Rude. Just kidding.
Having a woman explain your behavior. what we call that.
Just kidding.
I was going to
Can
make
I
a
just-
comment about sixes to see if Asher relates to this at all. My adult daughter is a self-described six. And she admits to doing a lot of worst case scenario thinking. But our experience of her is that when we try to help her understand that that worst case might not actually be the most likely thing to happen, she fights us. Like she goes straight to arguing. Can you relate to that? And if you can, tell me how that works inside of you.
Yeah, so I could definitely relate to that. And I think depending on the relationship I have with the person will shade how I respond, whether it's going to be combative or withdrawing, that kind of a thing. But I think what has been helpful for me is for the first response. So kind of how you respond is like validate and affirm, and then explore and invite other considerations and kind of help um, engage some strategic thinking. So part of the repressed center for senses is strategery is really hard for us. It's not impossible. It just takes a lot of energy, right? And so it it's a lot easier for me to stay in fear than to step into responsibility and agency and action. So it's like, so that's kind of the like helping move in a way, um where I think about a good friend of mine who's a three, very healthy three, and if I was having a conversation like that, the first thing he would do is typically kind of affirm like the feelings, the experience, I totally see how you can get there. He will then typically kind of also ask a helpful question of like, what exactly are you asking for in this moment? Are you asking for affirmation, validation, or are you asking, do you need some help figuring all of this out? And so I think doing that in some ways over time to eventually help get a six to where they're bringing problems to you in that way of like, hey, this thing happened, I just need to talk to somebody about it, or hey, I'm really stuck in this area. So like that's kind of like the destination. But I think for me, it's been helpful to first not feel like I'm crazy for thinking what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And I think starting there helps open up the door to, well, hey, let's explore this together, and you know and responding in a way that's affirming and inviting into that, into a more strategic way of thinking about it. Yeah, I think that's totally spot on. Like a lot of, you know, um, God, that scene from Zoolander comes to mind where what's his name? Will Ferrell's character's like, am I the one on crazy pills here? Is no one else seeing this? Like that is very much what sixes are ultimately looking for. Because here's the reality: I've put more thought into whatever we're talking about than anyone I'm having a conversation in with it, right? Especially with my nice little five wing. I've also maybe done a little research or whatever like that. Like, it is that like trust thing. It's sixes aren't always necessarily looking for an answer to a question. We're looking for
Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I have a 369 question that Katie and I are bantering about. There in Shuey's work, there's a lot of movement towards your processing center. My gut is that you're not simply moving towards your processing center, but that you're actually elevating both of your other centers that aren't your primary center. So for the six, you're not just moving relationally, you're also moving into your body. that you are moving away from the head into an active relational posture. For the three, they are not simply moving into doing, they are moving into a very thoughtful doing. And that for the nine, they're not simply abandoning action, but they're elevating both their thinking and their feeling. Would anyone want to push back against that and say, no, it's exclusive, aside from Miss Whitlock?
I I think what I would say, and this is just my view on the processing center. I'll use a story as an example. So there's this lady named Marge, and she loves going to the beach. She loves going to sit and reading her books, staring at the Phantom Boys, drinking pina coladas. Marge gets sick before going on her beach vacation one year, gets some congestion, a little nasally, and she starts hitting the nasal spray. Gets a little better, goes on her vacation, the sniffles come back. She starts hitting the nasal spray again. Guess what no longer works? The nasal spray, because the body's adapted to the nasal spray. She calls her doctor. She's panicking. She's like, I got a runny nose. I can't even enjoy my pina coladas. What's going on here? The doctor said, stop using the nasal spray. Let your body do its thing, and you'll be fine. I feel like for me, and I think this isn't just for 3, 6s, and 9, though I think it's the easiest way to look at it. I think our intelligence center is the nasal spray. And I think it's like we just kind of use this one thing so much that it's like recognizing that overuse or misuse or that kind of a piece where, yeah, I think it's backing away from that a little bit, but also kind of bringing these other things into play. And that's been, at least been my experience as a 6, right? It's like, how am I bringing my body into this because I'm experiencing a anxious physical reaction? How do I bring my heart into this and kind of name the emotions that are also giving me information? So I think that's kind of how I think of the processing centers and how the centers work, which I don't necessarily know if it's pushing against that or not, but it's just how I view that whole part of the Enneagram work.
Yeah. Big. Anyone else?
I'll offer that I don't push against that at all, which is going against the question you're asking. Except I'm saying, no, I don't push against, because you asked if any of us are willing to do that. What I'll say is that when I first heard the teaching about the processing centers, it seemed like a huge light bulb went off in my head. And I think that it helped me understand why it took me a long time to land on that I'm a 9. So because I'm kind of using, I'm trying to use all 3 at once, so I get confused. So
right.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to offer.
You would affirm though, it's not just thinking for you. When pivoting away from your physicality, there's a relational emotional component to how you are getting uh, the chaos free environment you might desire.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as I'm learning more about instincts, I'm thinking that, I must be social. I'm not sure. But yeah, the relationships, thinking, feeling, they're I have difficulty disconnecting them, to tell you the truth. So I don't
Right.
know. I don't know what that means. I'm
That's a good
confused
answer.
as hell.
It means that Jeff is onto something, is what it means.
I think you're right.
Can I say something that may or may not be related?
Do
But I realize that as a body type, I find it difficult when we get into talking about thinking. I can do the thinking, like when I'm talking, my husband's a 6, so we get into headspace quite frequently. But when we get into, whenever I'm in a situation where, like this today, where I'm talking about thinking and about how 6s think and about how 7s think, and then I get lost, and I can get lost. I can find myself like I've done the 9 thing of just going away, just disappearing. And right, so like I've only heard maybe half of the conversation today, and I keep having to pull myself back to it. I'm like, oh no, we're talking about this, and then trying to get caught up because I missed so much of it, and just I find it's much easier when it's a body type conversation, or even a heart type, because the heart is in the body, um, to be able to stick with the conversation. And I just thought I'd throw that out there as some of that. And
yeah.
even what Teresa was just saying about getting confused sometimes with the different centers. I'm like, yeah, I sort of move around and kind of forget about where I am and what I'm attached to until it comes back. I can somehow bring it back to the body.
Mm. Dare we say in service of the body, Katie?
Well, am I allowed to say what I think?
Of course you can.
So I guess before I do this, Jeffrey, or is your hypothesis that they are equal? That when 3s, 6s, and 9s leave their home base, they engage the other 2 centers equally? Is that what you're saying?
I think that the idea that you're processing with one of the centers makes sense to me. I think the idea that you are utilizing as a secondary center, that the other of the 3 just seems to work for me. So for 3s, you are doing, and it's very quick, thoughtful. It is engaging the mental center in support at the least. So I'm support is a loaded term there, but the like it, as a secondary center, it's I just see 3s when doing what they're doing to gain the attention desired. Really, I don't want to just say it's a thoughtful doing, but they like they're quick and intelligent on these fronts.
I think
It's
being quick and intelligent has
yeah.
nothing to do with the thinking center,
Well,
So yeah, what is the thinking center at?
I
I
Ingrid,
don't,
mean,
what do you think?
I don't think I always thought I went from feeling to thinking to doing. I don't. I go from feeling something and I go do right away because I can pivot once my thought process shows up. Because I think afterwards and then change direction. So I was surprised that my thinking center, I feel like sometimes it's repressed.
Yeah, me too. Would you say, Jeff, would you say how Ingrid just described that? Would you say that that is she is using thinking as a support just like later? Like, would you still classify that as doing supported by thinking?
I think y'all just it may be slightly invisible, and I'm trying to think of how it would be for the other centers on here. It's 6s, I think, makes sense here. They're not just relating; they're very active in their relating, and the action may actually be slightly invisible to the 6, but it's all in service of getting security. In the same way, I feel like 3s and 8s are this way with their thinking. You don't understand how fast it's going, and it's not intuitive; it's deductive. I think it's deductive. You understand the goal. It is both for both 3s and 8s, the goal is so simple. That's the thing. It's not simple for a lot of the other numbers. But for 3s and 8s, the goal is very simple. And that allows for thoughtful movement that they just crush. They crush and even leverage. Like if you were to ask a 3, why are you doing this? They will have a very fast answer for you. But that's deductive. It's not it wouldn't be intuitive at that point. Why are you doing the podcast? I bet you got an answer that's quick.
Well, I have an answer that's quick, but it's not strategic.
But in terms of, well, I bet you it is. Tell me what your answer is.
So I said on the podcast earlier, so if anyone listened to our 8, 3, and 1 podcast about processing center, the difference between me and an 8 and a 1 is that I have a goal and then I just start grabbing the closest thing that I feel like gets me closer to that goal. And there is no strategy. There's no detail work, right? It's just that these are the 3 things in front of me that I could do today. This one feels like it gets me closer to the goal, so that's the one I'm gonna do.
The strategy comes in it's Saturday. What are you doing on Monday, Katie?
I don't like I don't know. It's something Enneagram. But I don't know. Okay, can I set up my 9? Let me set up my 9s. I think 6s are different here. I think 6s are weird because you have that phobic counterphobic. So I actually would almost sign up with that they're equal in feeling and doing. But let me talk about what I think about 9s because I think this is the easiest to explain. In 2 minutes. Oh my gosh. Okay, so
We can go over this. We're into good territory. Go.
I don't think 9s are using feeling. I just think 9s are so good at making people comfortable that it feels like they're relational. So I think
Who are
not
they making uncomfortable?
other people, but just having feelings and anything to do with other people doesn't automatically belong to the feeling center to me. The feeling center is wanting to be seen by people and it is reaching out towards other people to make a connection, right? 9s aren't do 9s, I do not experience 9s as people who reach out to me to form a connection with me. I experience 9s, and you all know me, I'm marrying a 9, so I think this is a very positive thing, right? But 9s just create a space that is so comfortable that people feel easy around the 9. That is different than engaging the feeling center, right? Just being good with people and making people feel calm and peaceful is not processing in the feeling center or engaging the feeling center, right? That's the difference that I see there. And I think if anyone listens to the podcast, this is where Jeff and I disagree. Like, Jeff, I think sometimes you too easily place things in the feeling center if they just have anything to do with people. And I think that is not something that we should do. You know what I mean? Does that make
I
sense?
do.
Sorry, I tried to do that
Yeah.
quickly and that made it feel like it came out like I was angry and I'm not angry.
It seems to me
I just felt like I had to do that very quickly.
the counter argument that I would pitch would be something like I what I hear is a very narrow focus, and this is, I suppose, is it narrow or is it wide? Would be the question on the table in terms of what the feeling center is about and prioritizing. The real, it's not just that 9s want peace and harmony. They want it from others. Specifically, they want it from others in a way that they are received. Your presence matters can't be said by aspen trees. Like
Do they, or are people just part of the environment and they want the environment to be calm?
that's exactly what I'm saying is I think that they want it from other people. You like
Because people are part of the environment?
because people are people and that's the heart center. The environment would be much more intuitive in my mind.
But aren't
Maybe.
9s
Yeah, what do you all
moving
think?
into, I feel like 9s, my mom is a 9. And so I often think that she is very intuitively making space for everybody to exist in that is comfortable. But that does not mean she's engaging with my feelings.
No, but there is, you would say that she's aware of your feelings, yeah? She may not say that. Is your mom aware of your
She
feelings?
might be aware of the amplitude of your
I,
feelings,
Yeah.
right?
yes,
But
I would say that if the feelings are messing with the comfort, that gets noticed.
As opposed to feeling repressed numbers that you're in relationship with, she's more aware of your feelings.
I think a
In
seven's
in
aware
the
of your
context. Yeah, I think sevens are super aware of
sevens
feelings
are aware
too.
of your bad feelings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Threes are aware of your feelings. We just don't.
This is something I've been thinking about a lot, Katie, about the idea of how we're defining feelings. Because I really like in the book we're reading for book club, the idea of bonding feels very active. It feels very much like I am engaging somebody for their intention and connection. To me, that is a very nuanced version of feeling that when we just say feeling, we're just staying in this emotional realm. Everybody has emotions. Every seven I know cries, right?
Yeah.
Like it's that's not that's not the same thing. And so being able to nuance that, I think, is going to be really important.
Is
As a
the,
nine, I'd like to just say that I really do agree with with the whole idea of creating the comfortable space, and I do intuit people's feelings. It doesn't mean I want to engage with them, you know, like I do, like with my kids and stuff. But you know, somebody phones me and they've got a whole bunch of feelings. I might be on the outside, I'll be wonderful, on the inside I'll be, oh crap, I was just going to go do, you know, something else. But yeah, I remember in an interview for a counseling job, you know, they were asking about, you know, how do you prevent burnout? And I said, because I give 150% at work, and when I walk out the door, I don't care whether they live or die, which was an exaggeration. But, you know, it was a definite exaggeration. But, you know, I think that is kind of a nine thing, that I was good at what I did, and I worked with women and children, and just seemed to be able to slide in because I merged so easily. I could kind of slide in and pick up very easily, but that, you know, I was getting paid for it.
Let me specify something here because this you're making me clean up my language. There is the motive of the center and there is the utilization of the center, and those are different.
Mhm.
The motive of the center for agency bonding and certainty in Siegel's language, that is the motive of the center. But you can function in those spaces of your intuitions, your cognition, and your emotional life without the motive. So, what I would want to say is in practice, what is taking place is the motive for the 3, 6, and 9 is being defined by their center. They are uncomfortable in that space. The underlying feeling emerges. They detach from their center and they move into the other, they utilize the other two centers to process, with one being primary, and taking what they've processed with those other two centers, they move back into their home base to see if what they did in that processing meets their motivation. I think that's what I would want to argue for.
Andrew
Andrew.
said it's Andrew's.
It seems to me that part of this is a struggle to use language to define things.
For
So,
sure.
so Katie, you said you think Jeff is too willing to ascribe
Assign things to the, yeah.
assign things to feeling, right? Joy Shui says most of us are too willing to assign things to thinking,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's one of her primary points
Yeah, agreed.
about the three centers. So I think, and this is a very non-one thing to say, but I think both things can be true, Jeff. I think I think if we're careful about our definition, and maybe that's what you just said, the motive versus uh, the utilization of the center versus the motive of the center, maybe that's how to clean up the thought process here. But I think both things are true. And if we use language, if we're careful about creating language to clarify that, I think it could be understandable. That's just me as a one observing 3s,
Sure.
6s, and 9s trying to describe their inner working processes.
I agree with you, Andrew. And that's what Jeff and I like when we talk about this offline, like that's what we say too. Is it the real crux of it is like a language thing. Like what are we when we say feeling, what do we mean? Right.
In good news, that's what all communication is. The to wrap up, just because I want to perhaps clarify for future thought and the rest. The question on the table would be for you 3, 6s, and 9s, when you make that processing move, is anything occurring with that third center, the one that is not your home base and that one that is not your processing center? Is anything happening in the head center for the 3? Is anything happening in the body center for the 6? Is anything happening in the feeling center for the 9? My strong intuition is that something is happening and it's worth naming.
Can I ask you one last question that people can think about as they go?
Do it.
I think another big thing here is how much. So I asked you earlier, is it half and half? Like, are you saying it's half and half? I could maybe sign up if you're saying it's like 90-10 percentage wise, right? Like I'm 90% in action, maybe 10% in thinking. I might be more willing to sign up for something like that, right? So in your mind, when you say that, like, is there a percentage you are thinking, or like very vaguely, or no? Do you not think about it like that?
I think this may invite us into, this is again Siegel's work, into thinking through conversations about excess at this level, because it may not be the healthy person may have more balance than the unhealthy. A mark of unhealth for Siegel is that there's more excessive movement in a center. Yeah. And so that may have more fluctuation, and that might be worth talking through as well.
I feel like it's not quite as clear cut. I think that it's messy, and I think that some of the language that has been provided recently about it has been trying to be clear in a world that's relatively messy.
Yeah. Darn it. Well.
With that in mind, friends, it's been fantastic. And I appreciate all of your inputs and thoughts, and I'll put out a poll sometime before Wednesday. If you're in the Colorado area, we're going to a conference this week, so you should find us if you are going. And that's what I got. You got anything else, Katie?
No. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Jeff, are you mad at me?
Katie, I have great news for you.
Okay. Good.
I am never mad at you.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Then no, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. See y'all.
Bye.
Bye.